The bikers had seen plenty of strange things on the highway, but this made every man in the pack go silent. A teenage boy stumbled out from the tree line, one shoe missing, blood on his sock, limping so hard it looked like pain itself was chasing him. Mud streaked his face. His eyes darted over the road like he wasn't sure if the world itself was safe anymore. Then he froze. Headlights from a dark SUV cut through the dusk behind him. Jax Mercer throttled down first. "Easy, kid." The boy flinched, throwing up both hands. "Please, don't let them take me back." Engines roared in the distance, not from their bikes. From the woods. Something was coming. "Boss," Rico muttered, scanning the tree line. "We got company." Jax's voice dropped low. Calm, steady. The kind of voice that made chaos listen. "Leon, park the line. Mike, block the rear. Rico, lights off." 12 engines died one by one, leaving only the hiss of rain and the boy's ragged breathing. The SUV appeared seconds later. Tires crunching gravel, headlights too bright, too deliberate. It slowed when it saw the wall of motorcycles across the highway. Stopped. No one spoke. The rain beat down like ticking seconds on a clock. The driver's window rolled halfway down, just enough to show a pale hand gripping the wheel. A man's voice came through, slick and smiling. "Evening, gentlemen. You seen a kid run by here? Dark hoodie, maybe 15? Jax stepped forward, visor up, rain dripping off the brim of his helmet. "What's he to you?" The man smiled wider. "He's property of St. Clair Youth Ranch, ran off during transport. Dangerous type, needs medical supervision." Behind Jax, Rico whispered. "Property?" under his breath. Jax didn't move. "Got any paperwork?" "Sir," the driver said, his tone sharpening. "I don't have to show you." Jax raised a gloved hand. "Then you don't need to be here," the man hesitated. Two shapes shifted in the SUV's back seat. Silhouettes, heavy shoulders, the kind that smelled like hired muscle. Finally, the engine revved. "Your mistake," the driver said. "He's your problem now." The SUV peeled off, tires spitting mud, taillights vanishing into the rain. No one spoke until the sound faded. Then Leon spat into the ditch. "Property, my ass." Jax turned back toward the boy. He was still shaking, still trying to decide if these men were danger or salvation. "Name," Jax said gently. "What's your name, son?" The boy swallowed hard. "Malik? You hurt, Malik?" He nodded toward his leg. "Twisted it when I jumped the fence." "Fence from where?" Malik looked back toward the woods, voice barely a whisper. "From that place, St. Clair, they—" His throat closed. He couldn't finish. Rico crouched beside him, pulling a clean bandana from his jacket. "Here, man. Wrap this up. You're bleeding bad." Malik stared at the patch on Rico's vest. Road angels. He'd heard the stories about bikers like them, rough, loud, untouchable. But these men weren't what he expected. Their movements were calm, protective. "Not threats, walls." "Boss," Leon said quietly, "that SUV'll be back." "You know it," Jax nodded once. "Yeah, which means we're not staying here." He looked down at Malik again. "You trust me enough to ride?" Malik hesitated, then nodded. Jax lifted him gently, the way you'd handle something already cracked but still precious. The boy's limp was worse than it looked. They got him onto the back of Jax's bike, tucked between leather and engine heat, safe for the first time in God knows how long. Jax looked at his crew. "We're not taking him to the hospital, not yet. We find out who the hell St. Clair really is." Engines rumbled back to life. 12 headlights cut through the rain again. 12 angels on wheels, roaring into the night. Behind them, in the woods, the faint sound of another engine started up, slow, deliberate, like a shadow following their trail. But Jax didn't look back. Not yet, because he already knew. Whatever they'd just stepped into, it wasn't over. It was only the beginning. The storm chased them halfway down County 47 before the rain finally thinned to mist. The pack rode tight, engines low, headlights carving long silver lines through the dark. Malik clung to Jax's jacket, his good leg pressed against the exhaust guard, his eyes fixed on the blur of taillights ahead. Every bump in the road sent pain shooting through his twisted ankle, but he didn't complain. because for the first time in a long time, the pain wasn't the scariest thing. Behind him, Leon's voice came through the comms. Old service station up ahead. Roof still good. We'll hole up till morning. Jax nodded once and turned off the main road. They pulled into what used to be a Texaco, now just a skeleton of rusted pumps and broken windows. The sign hung sideways, letters faded to ghosts. Perfect. Forgotten enough that no one would look twice. The bikers moved with practiced rhythm, engines off, bikes lined nose to tail, perimeter checked. Within 2 minutes, the old place felt guarded, not by walls, but by presence. By men who'd seen too much to ever be surprised again. Rico was the first to speak. Kid needs warmth. He grabbed a tarp from his saddlebag, shook off the water, and spread it near the workbench. Leon found an old metal drum, kicked the bottom clear, and lit a small fire from road maps and broken shelves. Malik watched them quietly, his fingers still trembling from the cold. When Jax finally turned toward him, helmet off, Malik saw the face beneath the legend. Older than he expected, scar over one brow, eyes that had seen trouble and chosen not to look away. "You hungry?" Jax asked. Malik hesitated, then nodded. Rico tossed him a protein bar and a bottle of water. The boy tore into both like survival itself was wrapped in foil. For a while, no one said a word, just the crackle of fire and the slow rhythm of dripping rain. Then Jax broke the silence. "You said that place, St. Clair. You mean St. Clair Youth Ranch off Route 12? Malik's chewing slowed. His eyes flicked to the door, then back. "Yeah, thought that shut down years ago," Leon muttered. Malik shook his head. "They just changed the sign." Jax crouched down to his level. "What were they doing there, son?" The boy's hands clenched. "It's supposed to be for foster kids. Kids with nowhere to go." He swallowed hard. "But it's not like that. They work us all day. No school, no phone, no letters out. If you try to run—" He stopped himself, breathing ragged. "They call it discipline." Rico cursed under his breath. "Sounds more like a prison." "It's worse," Malik whispered. "'Cause nobody believes you. They say we're troubled. So when somebody gets hurt, it's just our fault." Jax's jaw tightened. "Who's in charge?" "Guy named Reddick. Used to be a cop. Always wears gloves." Malik's eyes went distant. "He smiles when he hits you. Says it's for your own good." The fire popped loud enough to make him flinch, Jax noticed. Quietly, he reached into his pocket and handed the kid a worn coin. A challenge coin, edges smooth from years of being carried. "Whenever things get too loud up here," he said, tapping his temple, "you hold that. Reminds you you're still here." Malik turned the coin in his palm. It felt heavy, real, safe. "Thanks," he said softly. Leon, leaning against the wall, watched the boy carefully. "You think they'll come after him again?" "They already are," Jax said. "And they won't stop till they find him," Rico frowned. "So what's the play, boss?" "The play," Jax said, standing, "is we find proof. We don't just keep the kids safe, we end whatever's happening at that ranch." Leon nodded slowly. "You talking to Morrison again?" "Yeah, cops ignored this before. This time they'll listen." Jax glanced down at Malik. "You trust me enough to tell your story, kid?" Malik hesitated. Then he nodded. "If it helps the others?" That's all I needed to hear. He turned toward his crew. "We split shifts tonight. 2 on watch, 2 on rest. We leave at dawn, head toward the old highway. From there, we trace St. Clair's supply runs. Rico, you're good with plate numbers. Start a list." Rico grinned. "On it." Malik tugged at Jax's sleeve. "What if they find us before morning?" Jax looked out into the rain, the mist turning headlights into halos. "They won't," he said. "Not tonight." But outside, beyond the broken pumps, a camera lens blinked red once, then went dark. Someone had already found them. Morning came slow, gray, and cold. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled like rust and old secrets. Jax was already up before sunrise, hands wrapped around a dented thermos of coffee, eyes fixed on the road. He'd barely slept. The boy's story had been running through his head all night, replaying between the firelight and the thunder. A private youth ranch, isolated, no oversight, ex-cop running it. He'd seen too many versions of that story to believe it ended well. Rico emerged from the service bay, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Cameras are fried. Whoever was watching us last night knew what they were doing. Signal went dead after one blink. Jax didn't look surprised. Means we're close. Malik sat by the fire barrel, the coin still in his hand. He hadn't said much since the night before. But there was something different in his posture now. Less flinch, more fight. Jax noticed it. That quiet shift when fear turns into resolve. You ready? He asked. Malik nodded once. Yeah, if you're sure. Jax gave him a faint smile. Kid, the day I start being unsure is the day they bury me. By 8, they were on the road again. A line of chrome and leather cutting through backcountry still wrapped in morning fog. The forest thinned as they neared the county line, and then out of nowhere the sign appeared. St. Clair Youth Ranch, EST, 1987. Faded white letters on a blue metal board. A wooden cross nailed beneath it like some twisted seal of approval. Leon slowed his bike and lifted his visor. Looks peaceful enough, he muttered. Jax's voice came back, low and flat. That's what monsters count on. They parked half a mile away behind a shuttered feed store. Rico unpacked the drone case, same model they'd used in past investigations. Silent motors, infrared camera, long-range transmitter. Malik watched as the tiny quadcopter lifted into the air, disappearing over the tree line. On Leon's tablet, the feed came in clean. A courtyard. A small chapel. 3 barns converted into dorms. And in the center, a line of kids hauling crates toward a truck. They're working them, Leon said quietly. No adults helping. Just one man barking orders. Rico zoomed in. Got a visual. That's Reddick? The man on screen matched the boy's description exactly. Built like a cop who missed power too much. Crew-cut black gloves, dark aviators even in the shade. He slapped a kid across the shoulder, hard enough to make the child stumble. Malik flinched. That's him. Document everything, Jax said. Every face, every mark, every plate. They watched in silence as Reddick oversaw the loading. No laughter, no music. Just efficiency born from fear. The crates had serial numbers burned into the wood, same kind used for commercial produce distribution. Leon frowned. So they're selling something. Cheap labor, Jax said. Kids working under the table. Products go out clean, profits come back dirty. Probably funneling through shell farms. Rico nodded grimly. A human trafficking wrapped in charity. Leon zoomed the drone toward the far barn. Through the broken roof, they saw rows of bunk beds, thin blankets, padlocks on the outside of doors. The tablet's microphone picked up faint sounds. Not conversation, but coughing. Whispers. Someone crying. Malik's face hardened. That's my room. Jax exhaled slowly through his nose, trying to keep his rage measured. You ever try to tell anyone? Yeah, once sheriff said I was lying. Said Reddick was doing God's work, Rico cursed. Small-town protection racket. He's probably paying the local PD. Jax stood, decision made. We're not playing quiet anymore. Rico, pull every plate you can find. Leon, send the footage straight to Morrison's encrypted line. No delays. Malik looked up, startled. You know cops who'll listen? Not all of them are dirty, Jax said. And Morrison's one of the good ones. Owes us a favor. They worked fast. Every minute felt heavier than the last. By noon, they had over an hour of footage. Proof of child labor, unsafe housing, physical abuse. Enough to start something, maybe even enough to end it. But then Leon froze. We've got movement. On screen, Reddick had stopped yelling. He was looking straight up. The drone camera caught it, his head tilted toward the sky, eyes squinting. Then he smiled. Boss, Leon said, voice tightening. He knows. Before Jax could reply, a shot cracked through the forest. The feed went black. Rico swore. They hit the drone. Time to move, Jax barked. Pack it up now. They scrambled to load gear back into their saddlebags. Malik stumbled, trying to help, panic flashing in his eyes. They'll come for me, he gasped. They always do. Jax grabbed his shoulders. Look at me. They ain't touching you again, you hear? The sound of engines rose in the distance. Not their bikes. Heavier, rougher, closing fast. Reddick wasn't waiting for law or daylight. He was bringing the hunt to them. Leon gunned his engine. They must have tracked the drone signal. Doesn't matter, Jack said. We lead them away from the boy, Rico's jaw set. And if they catch up? Jax pulled his bandana over his face, eyes hard. Then they learn what happens when predators chase hawks. The pack roared to life, gravel spraying behind their tires. Malik watched them ride into the fog, 12 men against the dark. And somewhere deep inside the boy, a tiny spark of belief flared for the first time. He wasn't running anymore. Someone was finally running for him. The road ahead cut through the fog like a scar, 2 lanes of cracked asphalt vanishing into pine. Behind them, headlights flared through the mist. Not just 1, 4, then 6, then 8. Rico checked his side mirror. They're coming in hot. Stay tight, Jax ordered through the comms. Keep the kid out of sight. Malik ducked behind the old gas station ruins where they'd left him with Leon. His heart hammered so loud he could barely hear the engines anymore. From the trees, the fog looked alive, pulsing, shifting, every sound a threat. Out on the road, the chase began. Reddick's convoy tore out of the tree line. Matte black SUVs, grills armored, lights off except for the flash of chrome under the dawn. They weren't trying to scare anyone. They were trying to erase witnesses. Rico shifted gears, sparks flying as his bike scraped asphalt. We can't outrun them on this stretch. Jax's voice stayed even. Who said anything about running? He jerked the throttle and veered left, off the main road and down an old logging path barely wide enough for a single truck. The others followed, engines roaring through mud and gravel, tires spitting stones into the dark. Behind them, Reddick's men swerved, trying to keep up. The path snaked through the woods, sharp turns, deep puddles, trees leaning in like spectators. The rain had made the ground slick, and one wrong move could send a bike tumbling. But Jax knew these roads. He'd ridden them years ago, back when the road angels were just misfits looking for a place that didn't judge them. Now it was their battlefield, split at the fork, Jax called. Rico, take east. Draw 2 cars with you. I'll take west with Cruz. Rico's laughter crackled through the static. Copy that, boss. Let's dance. The convoy broke formation, 2 trucks veering after Rico, their tires sinking deep into the mud. Jax and Cruz darted the other way, engines echoing through the valley like rolling thunder. But one SUV stayed dead center, the lead vehicle, the one with Reddick behind the wheel. He wasn't chasing for sport. He was hunting for control. He gunned the accelerator, forcing his truck through the narrow path. Tree branches scraped the sides, headlights flickering through the fog until the silhouette of Jax's bike appeared ahead. Got ya, Reddick hissed. Hand tightening on the wheel, he rammed the truck forward, metal shrieking as he clipped the back tire of Jax's Harley. The impact nearly threw Jax off balance. He swerved hard, missing a ditch by inches. Boss, talk to me, Cruz shouted through the mic. I'm good, Jax gritted out, fighting the wobble. But he's closer than I like. Up ahead, the path widened, and that's when Jax saw it. The old bridge, half collapsed, rusted beams dangling over a slow black river below. The perfect trap. He throttled down just enough to let Reddick think he was losing control, wobbling toward the bridge. The SUV gained speed, headlights blinding. Then, at the last second, Jax cut right. Gravel exploded as he skidded off into the grass, looping behind the bridge rail. The SUV didn't have time to stop. The truck's front wheels hit rotten wood, a cracking sound split the air, and the whole front end dropped like a stone. The bridge gave out, splintering beneath the weight. Reddick barely had time to curse before the vehicle tilted forward, nose diving halfway into the riverbank. Steam hissed from the hood. His door jammed on impact. Cruz pulled up beside Jax, breathless. That's one way to end a sermon. Not yet, Jax said, pulling off his gloves. Reddick was still alive, pounding against the door. Mud poured through the shattered window. His voice was a low snarl. You think this ends me, biker? Jax stepped closer, rain sliding down his leather jacket. He looked through the cracked windshield, meeting Reddick's eyes. Those same cold, lawless eyes Malik had described. You hurt kids, Jax said quietly. You called it discipline. You called it faith. But all you built was fear, Reddick sneered, blood trickling from his temple. You think anyone's gonna believe you over me? You're just a gang in dirty leather, Jax leaned down, voice steady as thunder. We're not a gang. We're a mirror. Then he pulled the dash camera from his bike, a small blinking light still recording, and held it up where Reddick could see it. Every word, every face, every plate. Uploaded, synced, safe. Reddick's eyes widened as realization hit. You already sent it, Jax finished. Your world's burning before sunrise. He turned to Cruz. Leave him. Law'll find him before the river does. They walked back to their bikes as the rain picked up again, washing the mud and blood into the earth. The fog began to thin, and in the faint glow of morning, the highway came back into view, empty, waiting. Cruz glanced back one last time. You really think justice'll stick this time? Jax swung a leg over his bike, expression unreadable. If it doesn't, we'll remind him it should. Engines roared once more, not in chase, not in rage, but in promise. They rode toward town, where truth was waiting to be seen, and a frightened boy was learning what safety finally felt like. By the time the engines died, the sky was pale gray, that color between night and morning when the world feels caught between choices. They'd brought Malik to the clubhouse on the edge of town, an old mechanic's shop turned into something more like a refuge. No neon signs, no noise, just the smell of oil, rain, and the faint hum of an old jukebox that never quite worked right. The boy sat wrapped in a blanket, hands trembling around a mug of cocoa Rico had shoved into them. His clothes were still damp, the bruises on his face deepening to purple. Every time the door creaked or a bike started outside, he flinched, a reflex burned in by too many nights of fear. Jax crouched across from him, his jacket off now, sleeves rolled to the elbow. The tattoos on his arms weren't for show. Names, dates, memorials. Every one of them carried a story, and he knew this boy's would too. You're safe here, Jax said softly. No one's gonna touch you. Not tonight. Not ever again. Malik stared down at his cocoa. His voice was barely a whisper. You don't know that. Jax waited. He didn't push. He just sat there, letting the silence stretch long enough for trust to start breathing again. Finally, Malik spoke. It started a year ago, after my mom got sick. Pastor Reddick, he said he'd help, said the church would take care of us. He brought groceries, paid the bills. He swallowed hard. Then, after she passed, he said I owed him. Cruz leaned against the counter, jaw tight. Rico muttered something under his breath that sounded like a prayer-turned-weapon. Malik went on, eyes distant. He said discipline was the way to save my soul. He'd make me stand for hours, no food, no talking. Then came the sessions, the ones he said no one would understand. His hands gripped the mug tighter, knuckles white. If I tried to tell anyone, he said the Lord would turn his face from me. The room went silent except for the ticking of an old clock. Outside, thunder rolled across the valley like the earth was reacting too. Jax's voice stayed calm, low, the kind that didn't demand, only steadied. You did good getting out. You did better coming clean. Malik looked up, eyes wet. Why would you care? You don't even know me. Jax tilted his head slightly. Don't need to. I know what it's like to have someone take everything from you and call it love. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. We've all been there one way or another. Difference is, we stop it when we can. Leon, who'd been silent until now, set a folder on the table. Inside were photos, printouts, receipts, everything they'd gathered from Reddick's warehouse. Kid, you weren't the only one, Leon said. He's been doing this for years. Boys from the foster homes, kids nobody checks on. You're the first one who made it out alive. Malik's breath hitched. His fingers shook as he looked at the papers, the photos of other faces, scared, bruised, missing. One of them he recognized. Jaden, he whispered. He said Jaden ran away last spring. Said he was lost. Jax nodded slowly. He wasn't lost, Malik. He was silenced. Malik's jaw trembled. So what happens now? Jax exhaled. Now, we hand this over to people who can't ignore it, and we make sure they don't try to bury it. Big Mike stepped forward, placing a comforting hand on the boy's shoulder, gentle despite hands the size of bricks. You're not alone anymore, kid. We ride with you now. That was the moment Malik finally broke. Not from fear, but from release. The tears came fast, shoulders shaking, the sound raw and human and needed. And none of them, not Jax, not Rico, not Leon, said a word. They just stood there, giving him what no one else ever had, space to be broken and safe at the same time. When the crying stopped, Malik wiped his face and straightened. "I want to tell the truth myself." "I don't want to hide anymore," Jax smiled faintly. "Then you will. But we'll be right there when you do." That night, as the rain eased and dawn finally pushed through the clouds, Malik sat by the window of the clubhouse, wrapped in one of Jax's old flannel jackets. He watched the horizon slowly lighten. Not bright, not yet, but enough to remind him that morning always came eventually. Behind him, the men spoke quietly, planning the next steps. Lawyers, social workers, the news station that still owed them a favor. They weren't strategizing revenge anymore. They were building justice. Jax looked over from across the room, caught Malik's gaze, and gave a single nod, the kind that said, "You're seen." Malik nodded back, hand unconsciously touching the small pendant he wore around his neck, the one thing from his mother he still had. He held it tighter this time, not in fear, but in strength. He whispered to himself, "She'd say this is what hope feels like." And for the first time in a long time, he believed her. The next morning, the town woke up to more than thunder. It woke to rumbling engines. 12 bikes rolled down Main Street in a single line, polished chrome catching the early light, leather jackets dark against the rising sun. People looked up from sidewalks and porches. Curtains twitched. Old men on benches stopped mid-sentence. Jax Mercer rode point, expression unreadable. He didn't ride fast. He rode deliberate, a slow procession that made people look, made them feel the weight of what was coming. By the time they reached the courthouse, every whisper in town had turned into a question. What are the road angels doing here? Inside, Sheriff Denton was already waiting, the same man who'd once shaken hands with Pastor Reddick in front of the congregation, smiling for the cameras. His badge gleamed under the fluorescent lights, but his eyes gave him away. Restless, calculating. "Morning, Mercer," he said, forcing a grin. "This isn't exactly your kind of turf." Jax took off his sunglasses slowly. "It is now." He dropped a folder onto the sheriff's desk. Photos spilled out, ledgers, invoices, names, timestamps, and a half-burned receipt from the warehouse. Denton flipped through them, jaw tightening. "You think this means something?" Leon stepped forward. "It means we know where the money went. Donations to the church, routed through shell businesses, all landing in Reddick's hands. And yours." The room went still. Denton leaned back in his chair, feigning amusement. "That's a dangerous accusation." "So's turning your back on a kid being hurt 2 miles from your station," Jax said quietly. Malik made it out. "The others didn't. You signed their missing person reports. You knew exactly where they were." For the first time, Denton's smirk cracked. "You don't have proof," Jax nodded once. "We will." Right then, the door opened. Morrison, the federal agent Jax had called 2 nights ago, stepped in with a team of investigators, badges visible, cameras rolling. The sheriff froze. Morrison held up a warrant. "We'll take it from here." Rico couldn't resist a grin. "Guess you do have proof now." As the agents began searching the office, Jax turned to leave. But before he stepped out, he said one last thing. "You built your house on other people's pain, Denton. Don't act surprised when it collapses on you." Outside, the crowd had gathered. Shopkeepers, truckers, waitresses, people who'd once nodded respectfully to Reddick every Sunday. They looked confused, scared, some angry. That's when Malik stepped forward. He was small compared to the men behind him, but he didn't look small anymore. His hands didn't shake. His voice didn't crack. "He hurt me," Malik said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "And he hurt others. They told me no one would believe me, but these men did. And now you'll all see what believing looks like." The murmurs rippled through the street. Some people turned away. Others just stood frozen, guilt heavy in their eyes. But one woman, an older lady in a floral dress, maybe a lifelong member of that same church, stepped forward and put her hand on Malik's shoulder. "I believe you," she said. That was the spark. In seconds, more people came forward, parents, workers, even a former deputy. Stories spilled like floodwater, things seen but ignored. Words dismissed as boys' trouble, small suspicions brushed off by the same sheriff now in handcuffs. By noon, Pastor Reddick's world was in flames, not literal but worse. His reputation, his empire, his illusion of holiness. When they arrested him outside the church, he didn't shout or resist. He just looked at Jax across the street, eyes venomous. "You think you've saved him?" he spat. "You've only doomed him to your kind of life, godless and empty." Jax's answer was simple. "No, I gave him back his!" The crowd erupted as Reddick was led away. Reporters shoved microphones toward Malik, but Jax stepped between them. "He's not your headline. He's your reminder," he said, voice steady. "When the strong stay silent, evil grows bold. Don't let it." The cameras captured it all, the words, the faces, the unity. And for the first time in years, that little forgotten town saw something real. Justice with oil-stained hands and leather jackets. Later that evening, when the news broke nationwide, the anchor's voice trembled slightly as she read, "What began as a routine ride for a group of bikers ended in the exposure of a long-hidden abuse network involving local officials and a church leader. The hero, a teenage boy, was found limping along Highway 47. Back at the clubhouse, the mood was quiet. No celebration, just reflection." Malik sat by the fire pit, watching embers drift up into the cool night. "What happens to me now?" he asked. Jax leaned back in his chair. "Whatever you want," he said. "School, home, maybe? One day, a bike of your own." Malik smiled faintly. "You'll teach me?" Jax smirked. "Only if you can handle the clutch," the others laughed softly. It wasn't loud or triumphant. It was human, real. Jax looked out toward the horizon, engines cooling behind him. A boy finally safe beside him, and whispered to no one in particular. Sometimes the road gives you what the world won't, a chance to do right, and as the fire cracked, he knew. That was enough. The following weeks passed like the slow turning of a heavy wheel, one that had been rusted in place for far too long. Headlines spread across the state. Local pastor arrested in abuse and smuggling investigation. Sheriff's office under federal review. Names that once carried weight now carried shame. But beyond the noise, in the little town off Highway 47, life was beginning to heal. The diner, once just a flickering neon refuge for the tired and unnoticed, became something else. People came not just for coffee, but to talk, to remember what listening sounded like, and every morning Malik showed up before sunrise. He'd sweep the porch, wipe down the counter, help the new cook unload deliveries. His limp was still there, faint but fading. But the way he moved, steady, unafraid, said more than any doctor's note could. When Jax and the Road Angels rolled up that first Saturday after the arrests, the bell above the door chimed again. But this time, it wasn't a warning. It was welcome. "Coffee's hot," Malik said, voice stronger than they'd ever heard. Rico grinned. "Kid's got bark now." Leon raised a brow. "Careful, he'll be running this joint by winter." Jax said nothing at first. He just watched Malik move, light, confident, shoulders no longer curled in. Then he nodded once. "Proud of you," he said quietly. Malik froze, caught off guard. Then he smiled, small but genuine. "Thanks, You think I could ever ride?" Jax's lips twitched into that half-smile the crew knew well. "You keep standing tall like that, and one day we'll make sure you've got a bike that fits." The room went warm with quiet laughter. It wasn't just humor, it was relief. The kind that comes when a storm finally passes and you realize the roof held. Outside, autumn had crept in early, amber leaves skittering across the pavement. The sky soft with clouds that looked more tired than threatening. A season of endings, a season of new starts. Later that day, the Road Angels returned to their shop. The garage smelled of oil, metal, and peace. They'd replaced their old neon sign, the one that used to flicker closed half the time, with something new. The Hawks don't run. Rico leaned against his workbench, flipping a wrench in his hand. You think it's over, boss? Jack stared at the rows of bikes, each one a story, each one a past. For Malik? Yeah. For us? He paused. The road never ends. Just changes direction, Leon chuckled. You always gotta sound like a fortune cookie, huh? Someone's gotta balance your mouth, Jack said dryly. And they all laughed again, the sound rolling through the open bay like thunder long after the storm. That evening, as the sun sank behind the trees, Malik walked alone to the stretch of highway where he'd first met them. The air was cooler now, the shadows softer. He stopped near the ditch where he'd once fallen, scared, bleeding, desperate. The ground was still scarred with tire tracks and crushed weeds. But it no longer looked like a battlefield. It looked like a beginning. He took something from his pocket, a feather keychain, left anonymously on his doorstep earlier that morning. Attached to it was a single word etched into metal, ride. He didn't need to guess who it was from. Malik smiled faintly, whispered, "One day," and slipped it back into his pocket. Behind him, faint but clear, the sound of distant engines rumbled across the hills. Not menacing, not wild, just steady guardians on the wind. That night, a soft rain fell. The diner's sign glowed against the wet asphalt, and through the window, Malik could be seen helping close up, wiping counters, humming to himself. Down the highway, the road angels rode in silence, their headlights slicing through the dark. Not chasing, not fleeing, just moving forward the way they always did. For them, it wasn't about glory or headlines. It was about moments like this, quiet proof that sometimes the right kind of trouble leaves the world better than it found it. As the rain thickened, Jax looked up toward the clouds and whispered something even his crew couldn't hear. Then he smiled, that same, tired, peaceful smile that said everything. The boy was safe. The town had changed. And the road still called. The sky had that golden kind of quiet, the kind that makes the world look softer than it really is. Late afternoon sunlight spilled through the broken clouds, stretching long shadows over the open road. It had been months since that night in the woods. Months since the roar of engines meant danger instead of rescue. The town had changed, not loudly, not overnight, but like a heart remembering how to beat again. The diner was repainted now. Same checkerboard floor, same humming old fridge, but brighter somehow. The old neon sign flickered open without stuttering, and on Saturdays, the parking lot filled with the hum of motorcycles lined side by side. The road angels had become a quiet legend, not the kind you read in the papers, but the kind folks whispered about in barber shops and on church porches. Those bikers, they'd say, they did something good. Malik knew. He lived it. He'd finished high school early that spring. The same kid who'd once limped barefoot down a back road now stood behind the diner counter with a clean apron and a steady smile. His laugh was easy, his eyes clear. He still walked with a slight hitch in his step, a reminder of what he'd survived, but it no longer looked like weakness. It looked like proof. That afternoon, he stepped outside to refill the ice chest. The hum of summer cicadas filled the air. He squinted down the road, that long gray ribbon that always seemed to shimmer with stories, and then, in the distance, he heard it. The unmistakable growl of engines, 12 of them. He froze, not out of fear, but memory. Then he smiled. The road angels rolled in, their headlights blinking like a heartbeat, chrome catching sunlight. They parked in perfect formation, like soldiers who never forgot the rhythm of the road. Jax dismounted first, older now, a few more gray strands in his beard, but the same unshakable calm in his eyes. Rico followed, still loud, still laughing. Leon carried a new tattoo on his arm, a winged emblem with a single word beneath it. Brotherhood. Place looks different, Rico said, eyeing the fresh paint. Malik grinned. You guys inspired the upgrade. Damn right we did, Leon muttered, elbowing him lightly. Though next time, paint it red. Make it look like it's got attitude. Jax chuckled quietly. Don't listen to him. Place looks good. Feels good. He looked at Malik then. Really looked. The kind of look a man gives when he recognizes his own reflection in someone else's survival. You riding yet? Jax asked. Malik hesitated. Not yet. But I've been saving. Got a little 250cc in the shed out back. Nothing fancy. Jax's brow lifted, impressed. Doesn't have to be fancy. Just has to be free. They sat at their usual table, the same one from that first night, but this time the silence wasn't heavy. It was full. Malik poured them coffee without being asked, just like he'd seen Jax do that night when the storm broke. You ever think about that night? Malik asked quietly. Every ride, Jax said. Rico nodded. Can't forget something like that. It's not the kind of story that leaves you, it just becomes part of the road. Leon leaned back, arms crossed. You changed the way we roll, kid. Used to be about pride, about proving something. Now, it's about purpose, Malik smiled. Guess we both learned something out there. They ate, talked, and laughed. The kind of laughter that fills the cracks where pain once lived. Outside, the sun dipped low, painting the asphalt gold. When it was time to leave, Jax stood fishing something from his pocket, a small, leather patch with a silver feather stitched across it. He held it out to Malik. Not a club patch, he said softly. Not a recruit badge. It's a reminder that what you survive doesn't define you. What you do with it does. Malik took it with trembling hands. You sure? Jax nodded. You earned it the day you stood back up. The engine started again, one by one, a rolling thunder that felt more like a blessing than noise. Before pulling off, Jax turned back. You keep that road under your feet, Malik. Wherever it takes you, ride it like it's yours. Malik stood by the roadside long after the last taillight faded. The wind tugged at his apron, warm and sweet. Somewhere inside him, a voice whispered the same word etched on the keychain he carried. Ride. That night, as the town slept, Malik sat at his small desk, the feather patch lying next to his notebooks. He opened a fresh page and wrote, in careful handwriting, Not all angels have wings. Some ride steel and thunder. He paused, then smiled to himself and added, And sometimes, saving someone isn't about fighting. It's about showing them they're worth being saved. He looked out his window at the empty road, that endless stretch where his story had almost ended, but instead begun again. In the distance, thunder rolled. Or maybe it was just the sound of engines on another highway, somewhere far away, carrying the same kind of men who knew what it meant to stop when the world tells you to keep riding. The same kind of men who saw pain and chose to stay. Weeks later, a letter arrived at the diner. No name, just a return address scrawled in pen, the Hawks Garage. Inside was a photo. Malik standing beside his little bike, smiling proud, grease on his hands. On the back, someone had written in block letters, One of Us. He framed it above the counter. Now, when new customers asked who those bikers were in the picture, Malik just said, Family. Sometimes the world teaches us to look away, to mind our business, to stay in our lane. But every now and then, someone hits the brakes, steps into the dark, and reminds us that courage doesn't wear a badge or a suit. Sometimes it wears leather and carries hope in its hands. The Road Angels didn't just save a boy that night, they saved a town that had forgotten what compassion looked like. And maybe that's the legacy that matters most. If this story reminded you that kindness doesn't always roar, sometimes it rumbles on two wheels, then hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more true stories that restore your faith in people. Have you ever seen someone step up when the world turned away? Tell us your story in the comments. Your moment of courage might inspire our next viral tale of hope and justice. And here's a little challenge for the sharp-eyed viewers. Around minute 7:14, when Malik looks at Jax before the engines start, there's a small gesture that says everything about what he learned that night. Did you catch it? Watch again and see what he does with his hand before the roar kicks in, because on this highway, every look, every sound, every heartbeat is part of the story.